Welcome to the second presentation for the Westland Historic Village Park. My name is Ryan Eberhardt. I am the president of the Westland Historical Commission. Brenda is our secretary, Brenda Ozog. Before I bring her up to start the presentation, I just want to give you an introduction to who we are and what you'll hopefully be hearing tonight from both of us. The Westland Historic Village Park is located on Wayne Road. I don't even know what direction it is from here. I think it's over that
South.
way. Just south of Marquette. We are open every Saturday from 1 to 4. Brenda and I, along with 4 others, we work every Saturday. We help with research. We take you on tours. We do have programs at different times of the year, at least one a month. This month we have the genealogy presentation. At the end of April, we have a cleanup day. We have a flyer for that if you're interested. The cleanup day, we're calling it May Day, since it's going to be the day before May 1st, which is May Day. If you're also interested in joining the Historical Society, we have membership forms on the table. You can sign up tonight, or you can take it with you and just send it in.
We really need some members to
Yes.
get this society going, so
The society
Please join.
really, for the last almost 10 years, has kind of declined. So we are looking for a lot of new members. So with all the house cleaning out of the way, we'll start the presentation. So before I introduce Brenda, how many of you in the audience have been researching your family tree for at least 2 years? Raise your hand. Brenda, go ahead and raise your hand. How many have been researching for 10 years? 20 years? 30 years? Between the two of us, we have 60 years worth of experience researching our family trees. I started when I was 11 years old, and I'm 43, so 32 years I've been researching. I started researching my family tree because there's streets named after my mom's family up north, and I was interested in the history of those, why they were named those names. And it turns out, actually, the street that is named after my mom's family is not the street that they lived on. Someone, when they put up the sign, flipped it. So the street that they lived on is called Mishod Road, and the street that the Mishods lived on is called Barlow Road, which, if you look on a map, it's F41, I believe, up around Mankato, Oscoda. So that's where my mom's family is from. Brenda and I like to joke that our families lived near each other, and my second great-grandfather served as a sheriff, deputy sheriff, and a town marshal up in Oscoda and Osable. Her family were the ruffians. So it's possible my great-grandfather arrested her ancestor. We love to joke about that. But we also believe that the people you know in your current life, your families somehow knew them too. So even though you might have ancestors in Chicago and New York, somehow they knew each other in some
our
way.
families connect through
Yes.
time.
I do have to point out that tomorrow for genealogists is a holiday. Ever hear of a genealogy holiday? No. Tomorrow, the 1950 census will be released after 72 years in, I don't even know what it's called. They wait 72 years to release that information. So this is the first census that my mom and several of her brothers and sisters will be in that I can actually research. I did have a couple of uncles that were in the 1940 census, which was released 10 years ago. They wait 72 years for privacy reasons. And then it's every 10 years a new census is released. So I'm very excited about that. So with Brenda, I've known for 10 years, approximately. We've been on the historical commission together, and we've done a lot of fundraisers and presentations. We've become very good friends. She has a master's in social work. And as she stated before, she has about 30 years worth of experience in genealogy. But as anybody knows, even though you can say you're an expert, there's always something you can learn.
And he's the person that got me involved in the genealogy. He bought me a program to get started. The reason why I got started, I grew up with a single parent. Okay, so I only felt like I knew half my family or half of who I was. So this was a journey for me to kind of figure out where I come from, who I am. And I also did it because I was tracing medical information for myself. At the age of 13, I started having seizures. Every generation, a female aunt had seizures. Cannot figure out why I had them. After 23, they stopped. But everybody else seemed to have a reason for them. So that was one of my reasons of starting genealogy. And so it just kind of became an addiction. So yeah, hi, my name's Brenda, and I'm a genealogy addict, you know. So.
So as I said, my name is Ryan. I have a bachelor's of arts in social studies, and a master's of social science. That's what MSOCSC stands for. Brenda brought up addiction. Addiction can be anything. I had a distant cousin tell me, while you're researching for your family tree, take breaks. It doesn't have to be long, but I took a whole year off, and when I came back to it, I broke a brick wall. Which was awesome for me, especially since the brick wall I had was here in Michigan, but it got broke by somebody in Great Britain. So get help from wherever you can and take a lot of breaks. So I'm going to turn it over to Brenda to start our presentation.
All right, you're going to become known as the black sheep of the family. Okay, when you go to family functions, you just want to talk about family history or the latest ancestor you found. So are you looking for your horse thieves? We talked about me. You know, people are going to be like, oh my gosh, here they come again talking about genealogy. So be prepared for that, okay? Next slide, please. This shows how many possible grandparents you have. So this is going to be a lifelong thing, and it is your journey discovering your ancestors. Don't let anybody take that away from you. Don't just copy what you find on the internet. Learn about who your people are. This is your journey, not somebody else's, yours. So eventually, at 22 generations, you'll have 1 million great whatever grandparents. Okay? That's why I say this never stops. Next slide, please. Okay, everybody heard of cousins removed? Yeah. It's very hard to explain it, so I put this video in here so you can understand what that means. Can you play that, please?
Let's start with the basics. This is Bob. We use him to show different relationships with his family. Bob's immediate family consists of his brother, his sister, and his parents. We can make this a whole lot simpler by just showing one of Bob's parents. This now represents Bob's mom or dad. We'll do the same thing for his siblings. At some point, Bob's sibling may decide to have a child of their own. This person will be Bob's nibling, or more commonly known as niece or nephew. At some point, Bob's niece or nephew may also have a child. This person would be Bob's grandniece or nephew, and the next generation would be great-grand. With each generation after this, you just add another great onto it. Now let's expand this above a little bit. Bob's parent also has a parent, which would be Bob's grandparent. They have another child besides Bob's parent. This is Bob's aunt or uncle. Any child here is Bob's first cousin. You and I might just say cousin. Notice that first cousins share the same grandparents. In other words, cousins are children of siblings. Here's where it gets a little interesting. If Bob's cousin decides to have a child, this person will be Bob's first cousin once removed. The once removed part refers to them being one generation apart. To find a common ancestor, Bob has to go up 2 generations, and his first cousin, once removed, has to go up 3 generations. So if we continue this pattern downward, this would be Bob's first cousin twice removed, and so on. Continuing upward, here's Bob's great-grandparent, and here's Bob's grand-aunt or uncle. A child here is once again Bob's first cousin once removed. This time it's reversed. Bob has to go up 3 generations, and his cousin only has to go up 2 generations. And down one more level, here is Bob's second cousin. Notice that second cousins share the same great-grandparent. Just as we did with Bob's first cousin, this is Bob's second cousin once removed, second cousin twice removed, and so on. We could expand this out again. Great-great-grandparent, great-grand-aunt or uncle, first cousin twice removed, second cousin once removed, and third cousin. Below Bob's generation, things are simple. Just keep adding 1 to the removed part. Third cousins once removed, third cousins twice removed, and so on. Let's take a good look at what we have so far. We can expand Bob's family tree as far as we want. However, unless Bob is an avid genealogist, he probably doesn't know much past his grandparents. Bob probably only knows and keeps in contact with a few of his cousins. At some point, cousins up here probably aren't alive anymore, and cousins down here haven't been born yet. But many cousins out here are probably alive and well. Bob just doesn't know who they are. Or does he?
Thank you. So if any of you are experienced with using DNA, you will see that Ancestry DNA will say this person is probably your 4th through 6th cousin. Do you see how much searching you would have to do to actually figure out who that exact person is? And sometimes they don't have trees attached on Ancestry DNA.
How far have you gone back?
How far have I gone back? I go back to Lady Godiva, 800s. You know who Lady Godiva is, or Godefoo.
She goes back, I go out.
So on your chart, when you make your chart, do you have all the seconds and thirds and then you put
I
your
will,
names on it?
on Ancestry, they name them as my 28th, 29th great-grandparent. So if you can use Ancestry.com for free. I just don't pay for a subscription because I'm cheap.
She has me for all the documents.
And I get them from everywhere else. And I'm going to show you how to do that, okay? But I just got an application. I belong to a lot of heritage societies, so I brought some stuff here for you guys. And I just got my application approved for Vikings and Valkyries. My Viking is Rollo, the Duke of Normandy. If you ever watch that show Vikings, Rollo, he kind of comes rolling in. They say he's Ragnar's brother, but he's not. Those are my ancestors. So, and I go through my mother's side. I always thought I would gone through my father's side because he's Swedish and Finnish, and thinking, oh, they're Scandinavian. That's the only where the Vikings came from. No, It's very important to learn history because Ireland, Great Britain, France, Iceland, they were all raided by Vikings, okay? And you got to think about, too, Ireland had Celtics. Part of
Britons.
Cornwall
Picts.
is Celtic. You know, you've got all these different groups of people. Scotland, those are Celtic people.
Wales.
Yep. And I find that if you trace your family to Cornwall and Wales, that's how I got to Lady Godiva. Through there.
Pirates too.
I belong to the Daughters of the American Revolution, and my ancestor's last name is Faust. So I'm not sure if I'm related to the namesake here, Mr. William Faust, as a cousin. But that family came from Germany, and he is my American Revolutionary War ancestor. And I'm sure if you guys can get through the census records to about 1850, 1840, you might find somebody too. So, next slide.
Anybody hear of, what's his name? Nathan Hale. I regret I have but one life to give for my country. He's a cousin for me. I actually just found that out last 4th of July, which is kind of interesting. It will happen on 4th of July.
You heard what mine was. You ever heard of, the axe murderer?
Oh, Lizzie Borden.
Lizzie Borden, yes. She is my 6th cousin, 4 times removed.
Hey,
I'm like, that's the second family member I found in my family that was accused of murder. Now, she was acquitted, but second family member that was accused of murder.
Speaking of Lizzie Borden and finding out that she's related to her, don't worry if you find out that you're related to Lizzie Borden or even, I hate to say it,
That's the horse
Adolf
thieves.
Hitler. You are not responsible for what these people did. But their connection to you is valid. It's what happened. You can't fix that. So don't be afraid to add them or add what they did to your family tree.
It just makes things more interesting. Like I said, the horse thieves. There used to be a heritage group called Black Sheep Society. I don't remember if it's any. Oh, I'm also a member of the Early American Witches, so I've had 2 grandmothers that were executed during the Connecticut witch trials. So you can go far back. Don't think things are just, so far. You can go far back for most groups, okay? And you'll find, you got to look through a lot of wills, probate records. That's something where we start with primary sources, okay? So primary sources is birth, marriage, death, okay? Everything else would be secondary sources, okay? Don't just go on familysearch.org and copy the information there. You want the documents. So for us in Michigan, we have Michiganology. You can go there and get death records up to 1954, but in order to see the image, they have to be 100 years old because of HIPAA rights. Okay? So you can actually pull, GENDIS is the first, it's Genealogy Death Indexing System is what the state of Michigan used first for death records, starting in the 1860s to 1894, I want to say, or 1897.
Yeah.
But it's all transcribed, okay? The state of Michigan at that time collected all these death records, and you'll see for us in Michigan, a lot of our people came from New York when the Erie Canal opened up. So history is very important to remember, you guys. Marriage certificates, some people, it wasn't required until about 1910 to register birth marriages at the county level, okay? So you might have to go to find out whatever faith they were, okay? I found out from one of my great-great-grandmothers, she was Methodist, and the preacher took his records with him as he left the church. So where do I write? The records are lost. So I'm not going to be able to find out. In each religion does, some don't baptize right away, infants. You got to know what the faith is. And then
put that website up there that you mentioned?
What, in Michiganology?
Yeah.
Or GENDIS?
Oh,
Okay, GENDIS is GENDIS. Okay. And then Michiganology death records, put that in, because other than that, they want you to buy their apparel. And then Michiganology used to be the Michigan Library, State of Michigan
I don't
Library
remember.
system. So they transferred all those over. So like you won't see anything before 1943 image-wise, but there is a transcription. So, you know, you'll be able to, I was doing that and finding out causes of death for family history, you know, medical history stuff. Some of them may have mistakes because they might, if you look at the Eloise records we have, most of the people that were in Eloise were actually immigrants that came here first and were going to send back for their families. Okay? So they were here by themselves. There was nobody there to say, who is his father's name? Who is his mother's name? Where was he born? That's why a lot of stuff is so incomplete with our Eloise records.
So also with Eloise, you have to think of it was a poorhouse first. It wasn't a hospital. It wasn't an asylum. It was a poorhouse first. So that's why a lot of immigrants ended there, because they didn't have anywhere else to go. They didn't have a family member here to live with. They didn't have anybody here at all to live with. So they ended up in places like Eloise. And every county in Michigan had some sort of poorhouse. We actually have a book at the museum that'll list all the poorhouses that ever existed in Michigan. So if you're interested in looking at that, the records for those are usually kept in at the county level, the county courthouse, the county clerk's office, probate, historical societies. We do have some information for Eloise, not a lot. If you're looking for the cemetery, we don't really have any information about the Eloise Cemetery. It was a potter's field.
Well, some people were donated to the Detroit
Yes.
School of Medicine, which is now Wayne State. So just because they died in a certain order doesn't mean they were buried that way. Some people did come and collect their loved ones and buried them in a private cemetery. There's over 7,000 people buried in the current Eloise Potter's Field. Okay.
Also, for researching these primary sources, as I said, I've been doing it for 32 years. I've gone to courthouses and clerk's offices for the county, and I've looked at the ledgers that they wrote them down. And when you're talking about transcriptions of those ledgers, one of my ancestors, their last name was Burgess, Burgess. That's what's on the census, but someone transcribed it with a T at the end.
Just make sure you do variation of spellings if you're using a search engine, because some people couldn't read or write. So when the census taker came around or the clerks came around, they wrote it like it sounded. Okay?
And they also used nicknames. So my father's mother's name was Florence. Sometimes she shows up as Flo. It could be Harry for Harold, or could be, I don't know, Lizzie Borden is Elizabeth. It could be anything.
There was one person I was searching for. Now, I did some French Canadian going back to Quebec. Okay, I have 23 filles d'Oise. If you want to know what that is, I can tell you what that is. But the lady's name was written down Oriole, like the bird. And I'm like, I cannot find this woman anywhere. In the middle of the night, I'm dreaming. I'm like, oh, French. Oh, yeah. And that's how I found her. The census records, that's why they're not a primary source. Okay? But, like I've told some people here that's done some Eloise research, if you're looking for patients and you want to kind of get around the HIPAA records, you go to the census records like 1920, 1930, 1940. They're listed as inmates under the Wayne County Poor Farm. But you got to remember, too, staff lived there, too. So just because their name is there, it has to say inmate next to it, because everybody was there. It was a city of its own. But you can find some of those records there. Other than that, it's HIPAA protected.
Also, my grandmother, Flo, I think she was about 4 or 5 years old. She was put into an orphanage. When you're looking at those census records for orphanages or even Eloise or a place like Eloise, look for common names. I didn't know that Flo had a brother. And when I found that out and I looked for a common name while she was in the 1910 census in the orphanage, I found him. And I also found out where he's buried. I want to go and, visit his grave and pay my respects. That's what historians and genealogists like us do.
Talk about the family, the two people buried in Ganong,
Which ones?
the ones that were not white.
Oh, okay. So last fall we did a cemetery walk at the Ganong Cemetery on Henry Ruff, just south of Michigan. And in our research to find people to talk about, we found a husband and wife that lived in Westland. They were born in Pontiac. They were married in Pontiac. They worked in Pontiac. Their kids were born there, but they lived and they ended up moving to Westland, or Nankin Township at the time. Every record that they had up until the point that they died and were buried at Ganong Cemetery listed them as black. Their death record and their burial record lists them as white. Our theory is that the husband's mother grew up in Kentucky, escaped before the Civil War to Canada. Somebody helped her get across the border, and we think it was a Ganong that helped them. So when they died, the Ganongs being right across the street, they had a big house where the, what's it called, Fire something church?
Yeah. Burning Bush Ministries.
Burning Bush Ministries. They lived across the street, so when they died, one of the Ganongs helped get them buried in Ganong Cemetery instead of the cemetery in Michigan
Westland.
and Merriman, which is Westland. That was where most of the black citizens in and around Westland were buried. So I was the one that presented that, and I thought that was a great addition to show what was happening at the time, how they were able to do that. So looking at the documents, you can't trust everything. So if you see a document that says one thing and you see tons of others that say the other, I would go with the other.
You might not think you are what you are. That's part of your journey.
Yes.
You'll make discoveries and like, ooh, I didn't know that, or ooh.
Anybody here allergic to dust? Okay. Okay. Got one. I am, so get used to it if you go to a clerk's office. Because you're gonna start sneezing. You'll need Zyrtec or whatever.
So the farther back you go into your family tree, you will see, I like to call this colonial naming patterns. Okay, when a woman had a child, the boy was normally named after the mother's father. Second boy, the father's father. Third boy, the father, and so on. So you can kind of get, it's not 100%, but it could give you some clues on how the children are named and who the next generation might be named. Okay? You can see, well, I've got English and Welsh, Dutch, and German. So the Germans kind of switched it up. Of course, they always have to switch it up. The first son's after paternal grandfather, second son after maternal grandfather, third after the father. So that's when, it will say what their ethnicities are, usually on the census records, to kind of give you, okay, the possible next generation for the mother might be this name. And a lot of times when they lost a child, the next baby was named after the child they lost. Okay? You will see a lot of deaths. Can you turn the next one, please? City records. We kind of talked about this. You want to try to, if you're trying to do timeline purposes to figure out like when did they come to this city, tax records. You can go to the clerk and say, here's the address of this property. Can you tell me the names? We do a lot of searches.
Yes.
for things like that. Like I said, we have Wayne County court records. We looked through some books. Somebody got pulled over for drunk driving, or what was some of the silly stuff? Speeding.
There's so many.
We were sitting there looking at, this is stupid. I can't believe they got in trouble for this, you know. So we do have some records there if you want to kind of, what's the biggest crime that happened around that time that went through the courts or whatever.
Biggest crime in Westland, Nankin Township, was 1873 grave robbing,
Oh, yeah.
which was at Ganong Cemetery. And I found, look at newspapers.com. I think you have to have a membership for that. I found the articles for the grave robbing and the trials. There were two.
That's how the School of Science or Medicines got their cadavers.
Yes.
Is from grave robbers or the poorhouses.
Yep.
Because nobody was there to claim them, and so they couldn't give permission to say, yes, I donate my body to science. So they would go after somebody was freshly buried, dig them up, throw them over the fence, take off with them. Didn't they go to Ann Arbor usually, or Ypsilanti first? Or?
Yeah, because Eloise was a teaching hospital, but the hospital in Ann Arbor for U of M, that started, picking up reputation, and also Wayne State.
It was Detroit School of Medicine back in the day.
I
I have an interesting story for that.
Go ahead.
I have a second grade grandfather. He had a family in Detroit and one in Port Huron at the same time. So he was kind of an interesting guy. But going through to prove who the parent was, his name was on all the vital records for the family in Port Huron, but he wasn't on the census records living with them. And then he was married to a woman in Detroit. And then as soon as he died, that's when the family left Port Huron, because I think the financial support was gone. And they moved to Oscoda.
I had family in Port Huron too, a different line. So again, we have our lines intersect.
And then after Oscoda, some of them went to Minnesota. So I don't know if anybody's any baseball fans or not. Wally Gilbert, he played for some of the professional baseball teams. He's my third great uncle, I want to say. Third great uncle. So I was like, woo, check that out.
I don't know her tree that well.
So next slide, please. All right. So here's the free stuff, okay? I use Family Search a lot, okay? They actually really did a lot of changes since we first started out. But don't just copy what's there. When you can go to a family tree and you can register for an account. It's free. They don't try to contact you or anything. I've had this account for 28 years probably. So you go on there and you can start your own tree on there too, okay? They will have the census records. Sometimes they have birth records. It's actually the pictures of the pages of the binders that the court clerk wrote in. Ancestry is available here, and we have some. If you're a Westland resident, you can use the MyHeritage here for free or Ancestry, but you got to come into the library and use it. So here's the information from the library here, and I have an Ancestry account. Like I said, I don't pay for it. I just put my stuff on there and save it on there, and people can contact you. I also did my DNA with them too. So I was going to tease my mom and take her a DNA kit and say, I want to make sure you're my mother. Because the family, you just joke around. We joke around like that all the time. I didn't do it. Find a Google Books, okay? You go to google.com, hit more, and you can type in the names in quotes. So like you're looking for John Doe, and A&D in capitals, his wife's name. And if there's a book available, they will pop up. And they're free usually.
There's also a company called Forgotten Books. It's a website. You can also get them in print. These are two that I've picked up that I'm related to: the Bard family and the Ogden family. When you get some of these books, this one was written about 100 years ago. You want to be careful because when the author of this book for the Ogden family, when they were starting to research it, they hired a professional genealogist, and I should air quote that because it turned out the professional genealogist was a scam artist. He actually created a fictional town in Great Britain that called Bradley Plain. Doesn't exist. Does not exist. So we don't know beyond the first generation in this book, the person that came over to the colonies at the time, who his parents were. There's, I don't know, 5 or 6 possibilities in Great Britain, and I don't know if you know how big Great Britain is. It's all over. There are 5 different cities that he could have been.
The size of Texas, I believe.
What is it?
Great Britain is the size of Texas, I believe.
Yeah.
If that gives you any idea visually of how big it is.
So be careful when you hire a professional, or even looking at books like these. Like Brenda said earlier, some of the information may not be accurate.
Find a grave is great if there is a headstone, okay? But I have found an uncle who had a headstone that was in error, okay? So you got to match the death certificate up with the headstones, okay? But it lets you know a time period, an area to look. It's great if you can find somebody from the American Revolutionary War, because then, it'll say, usually they have them marked by the DAR or, what regiment they were in or something like that. Civil War soldiers and sailor indexes. This has both North and South.
And it's
Free.
It is free, but it's administered by the National Park Service. They also do the Civil War headstones. So if you're interested in getting someone a headstone that doesn't have one that is for the Civil War, they do that.
I am the local president of the chapter for Daughters of the Union, in case you want to know. And if you're interested in joining, you can talk to me about that. But the one I belong to, you can do uncles. They call it collateral instead of doing direct line. So this was great because I did uncles that didn't have children to honor them for their sacrifice and their service. Bureau of Land Management is great. I mean, sure, great. If you go to the 1840 census, it just has the man's name. Doesn't list the woman or all the children, just him and some check marks. Okay? But if you want to try to find out when they came, I'll show you in a second. Bureau of Land Management, the land patents are great. Now, most of the people came from New York when the Erie Canal opened up and bought land here in Michigan. Some got it for their service in the War of 1812, and some got a land grant for the American Revolution. Okay? Of course, we're going to promote the local historical societies. So we are trying to create a great archive on Nankin Township and Westland. Okay? So if you have family histories you would like to donate to us to put into our archives, we will gladly take them.
We
Okay.
also, for that, we have a First Families program, and it'll be on our website, which is whv66.weebly.com. So we'll say it again at the end. So the First Families, it's a certificate program or a society program that has 4 or 5
Levels.
what's that?
Levels.
And I unfortunately would have to be the most recent because my family didn't come here until after Westland became a city. So
like if you're from 1850, you have ancestors you can trace to Nankin Township in 1850. You could be a pioneer certificate.
yep.
Okay, or there's different levels. I mean, people were here a long time. I have a grandfather that was from Quebec, and he died in Detroit in 1717. So the state of Michigan Genealogy Society also gives out certificates. So I got pre-statehood,
Lucky.
and then I got one for pioneers. So you can get so much. I mean, and if you can prove a lot of this stuff, scholarships are available for a lot of kids too. Daughters of the American Revolution, the Patriot Index is free. The only thing is, these are proven lines only. So you may come across a new patriot, okay? you can go in there, type in your Patriot's name, and it'll pop up if he was already proven and if he's accepted. I have one grandfather, they took him out. It was said at the time he was a Teamster, but they cannot find the actual military proof, so he is no longer a Patriot according to them. So I went through his father-in-law, John Nicholas Faust. So I don't know if I'm related to the Faust here. And they came from Germany. And he gave money, he was old, so he gave money for the war effort. And they consider him a patriot. United Empire, Loyalists of Canada. Those were the Loyalists that fought during the American Revolution, and I have a couple of those. One of mine is a spy. So, of course, I'm the president for the United Empire Loyalists in Canada, first American to be president over there. And I'm also with that same ancestor. There's a group called Cloak and Dagger. So if you descend from a spy, you can join this group. And my grandfather, I don't remember, great-grandfather, whatever, he was a preacher. Those preachers were pretty sneaky back then. And he used to take stuff like in a bullet in his mouth and give it to the Loyalists. And when he feared capture, I'm told, this is what stories say, he would take it out of his mouth and throw it in the fire. So he ended up in Ontario. The King of England gave people land grants for their loyalty to him. So you'll see in the American Revolution if you're back that time period, but your family went to Canada, that's a big clue they might have been Loyalists.
One of my lines actually does start in New York and then go to Canada. So I can be a Loyalist. Unfortunately, I have not joined. But my Loyalist owned an inn or a tavern or something near Fort Ticonderoga, which is kind of interesting to me because I work in a hotel. So you can, compare what you do now with what your ancestor did. My grandmother Flo worked in a hotel in Chicago. So I like to look at those coincidences.
This is the only group that you can get your title of nobility from Canada. So behind my name, I have the letters UE for United Empire. So I actually have a title of nobility in Canada. And they have an index like DAR does, where you can search proven ancestors for them. Next slide, please. All right, Bureau of Land Management. This is what I was talking about. Can you click the link for me, please? And I'm going to have you do a search for me. All right, so everybody knows, hit search documents for me. Everybody knows who Glody Chubb is, right? He's one of our big pioneers in the area. He was part of the Underground Railroad. Can you put state of Michigan and then Wayne County?
I call him Glode Chubb.
I call him Glody.
Chubb Cemetery is up on Warren between
Can you
Hicks
just put last
and
name Chubb?
Lotz. It's very small. There's about 30
Search
people
patents
there.
on the bottom. So this is what I was talking about, timeline stuff. If you want to figure out when they came to Michigan, his name is actually Dugan Glode Chubb. So if you want to hit the top one for me, Matt, please. He was in the Michigan-Toledo Strip, because remember, Michigan owned part of Toledo at the time. We sold that off to get the Upper Peninsula. Go to patent image, please. This is just the transcript where he bought the land. And you will see, if it comes up, there you go, the actual land patent. And the president at the time who signed it, John Quincy Adams, signed the land patent for him. He came, what's the date? Well, he's patent number 2110. Land office is in Detroit. This Congress passed this in April 24th of 1820.
And it also shows where.
The coordinates of the land.
Yeah.
Can you go down for me, please? And the date, the first day of, move over, please. There you go, September, 1st of September, I think it was 1851. Is that it?
I think go that way.
Got to move
Go to the
slide it
left.
to the opposite way.
1,800.
And
Oh,
26. Oh, 1826.
26 or 24?
6. So he bought his land grant in 1826 to come to this area. Now, I don't know the land coordinates because I believe the Chubbs had a farm on Michigan Avenue in Vinoy first, because that's where the Underground Railroad came up the Rouge River, and they hid them there and helped them get over to other parts to get over to Canada. And there is a lady, I can't remember her name, she does do a program for the historical societies on the Underground Railroads. So this is how, this is when I thought everybody, he's from New York, okay? County, what is that?
I can't read that.
Handwriting is not the same as what we had, and the farther back you go in time, especially in England, your eyes will cross. I swear. So he had a couple land grants. So if we go back, you'll see he had like 2 or 3 land grants. Okay, and some people actually went together on the land grant. So that's how you know who traveled together from New York to here, and a lot of them went through Canada to come to Michigan. Okay. We all set with this one?
Yeah.
You can click out of this one now. All the way up. Okay, so how do they pay for their land? I talked about military service, cash. It will actually say for their service in the War of 1812, or it'll say, American Revolution on there. So yeah, I did have an image of it on there. All right, you want to say anything on this? So then, once you know he's here in 1826, then you pull the 1830 census. Well, we know he went by a different name afterwards, though. So on here, his name is Dugan.
Sometimes it's listed as Duggar with an R instead of an N.
So he may not have been able to write. Sometimes you'll see if there's a signature, you'll see an X. Okay, that's your clue they couldn't read or write. And I've seen so many of my ancestors like that. Next slide, please. All right, my favorite part. These are different heritage societies. I kind of talked about them already. They've already had these lines proven. You can search their databases to find any ancestors that you may have. A lot of it's free. So like, remember, Civil War and Soldiers database, Revolutionary War, American witches. I talked about that's the Connecticut witch trials happened around the same time as the Salem witch trials, which also happened in England, Ireland, and Scotland. People were accused of witchcraft, and all somebody had to do was say you're a witch. And then you're like trying to prove you're not a witch, and they did such techniques to make people can say that admit to it.
Yeah.
And they died
if
anyway.
you dunk them in water and they float, they're a witch. If they sink, they're not a witch.
So I have some stuff over here. Okay, so there's some new groups that started. This is a men and women's society, National Society of American Farmers. Okay, so they do nothing but scholarships. So if you prove your lineage to a farmer, that money you send in goes to a scholarship for a farmer's child. Okay, so I have this here. I have National Society of New England Women. So if you can trace yourself back to the New England states before a certain time period, you can join that group. American Rosie the Riveters. We are very good friends with them because we have a rose garden for them there. All you have to do is say, my grandmother worked at the Willow Run plant, or my grandmother had a victory garden. My grandmother collected tin. She's a Rosie the Riveter. One-time fee, $25. You're in.
Also for that, since we're talking about the Rose Garden and the Rosie the Riveters, we have the makings of a rose garden at the village. Currently we have 7 rose bushes. We're going to be putting 6 more in this year. 2 have been claimed to dedicate to a Rosie. My aunt is getting one for her mother. She worked building wings for the bomber plant. And I forget the other person. You wanted to get one.
Yeah, my great-grandmother ran the farm up in the Sheboygan area, where I'm all from. And while my great-grandfather, he was a World War I vet, came to Yankee, and he worked with the Rosies building the flying boxcars. So I honored her. This is all about me honoring my ancestors, too. I honored her as a Rosie the Riveter, and I have her name on a thing at the Willow Run Museum, saying she's a Rosie.
So we do have 4 rose bushes that have not been claimed. If you're interested, let me know at the end and we can get you the information.
Well, we have the tea party coming up.
Yep, we have the Rosie the Riveter Tea Party, which is on the same day as the dedication for the rose bushes on May 21st.
These women are almost 100 years old, okay? Can you imagine having a tea with somebody from history? That's the cool thing about this tea party. They just celebrated, I have her, they gave me, oh, I got it up there. They made some pins because one of the ladies just celebrated her 100th birthday, okay? These ladies love this tea party and they love being honored like this. And they have regular meetings once a month, I want to say.
You know more than I do.
So, this is for the men out there. There's the Sons of the American Revolution, and then there's the Sons of the Revolution. Sons of the Revolution is if you had an ancestor that was an officer. The other one gave money, was in the militia, did some sort of part in the revolution. You can join the Sons of the American Revolution. And then I have one other thing I have up here is the National Society Dames of the Court of Honor. So if you had a high-ranking officer you descend from, you can join this group. It has to be a commissioned officer. So you'll see a lot of these women, they go to Washington, D.C., you know, all their pins, you know, and we call it lineage swag, you know, and they like to show off that they can go back so far and, you know, prove their lineage that way.
One of the groups that Brenda didn't mention, but there is a flyer, is for Founders and Patriots. The Ogden family, the progenitor, the person that came over from England, and his name was John Ogden the Pilgrim. I picked up this book. It's a biography of him. He actually helped found the colony of New Jersey. And he's my, I don't know what degree, cousin. I thought I was a direct descendant. I could have probably joined that as a...
This is a male line only, so you have to go from yourself to the, there's a female part and there's a male part, but you have to go down the male line completely to your ancestor. Now me, I go down the male line, and then at the last minute, I go through the grandmother, so I'm not eligible. So, but I am the what they call a registrar for multiple groups here in Michigan. I'm a former past president of Sons and Daughters of the Pilgrims. So if you can trace yourself to somebody before the 1700s in the colonies, you can join this group.
At last count, how many genealogy groups are you a member of?
About 20.
I'm a member of 0.
So I am hosting a Heritage Days event. So if you want to come and see about the different groups that are available in Michigan, that's May 6th and 7th down in Monroe at the Sawyer House Homestead. We're hosting a tea, so if you men like teas too.
Yes, we do. I did.
Because when we first started the Rosie thing, the guys were like, I don't want no little tea sandwiches or little sandwiches. Oh man, they can't wait to have those sandwiches now. I'm hosting a Daughters of the British Empire tea. Okay, so if you are a descendant from somebody from Britain or any of the colonies, okay, I mean, they did a lot. They were all over the world. You're married to somebody from Britain or you are British, you can join the society. So if you'd like to come to my tea party, I have the STEP program, which is here in Westland, Services to Enhance Potential, cater my event. So I use museums to support the museums. I use a community group for our food, and then our group gets to enjoy all that. So we're serving the community as well and historical societies as well as anything else. I think, is that the last slide? Oh no, we got more. There is more. Okay, if you're looking for World War I or World War II records, you're not going to find them unless the veteran kept them himself. There was a fire down in St. Louis which destroyed the National Archives. So my grandfather, who was from the Upper Peninsula, always kept his discharge papers in his wallet. Well, when he passed, I got to take a picture of him, and so I joined a World War II group, descendants of World War II veterans, and then he served in the Asian Pacific, too. So I don't remember if he was an MP. He was in New Guinea. So that I got to learn more about my grandfather and his service and what he endured. You know, I'm glad he wasn't in Europe to experience what they experienced in Europe, but he still fought the Nazis or the communists when he was in New Guinea. And so that's probably, I have a membership with a World War I group and a World War II group because my grandfathers kept their disabled American veteran cards or in their wallets. My grandfather's wallets were like a gold mine.
So to piggyback off of this, it wasn't just the World War I and the World War II records that are missing. The 1890 census records, about 90% of those records are gone. I believe there was a flood,
Something like
possibly maybe a fire. In the packet that was on your seat, it shows a sample of what the record looked like, but you're not going to find anything. However, anybody who served in the Civil War or
that. A widow.
maybe a widow, the pension records for 1890, the census record for that is available. So they were able to piece some of it together. We didn't talk about this before, and Brenda wanted me to mention it. If you have old phone books, you know, the white pages,
They're like
yellow
city
pages,
directories.
yellow pages too, because we, you know, looking for businesses. Those are very valuable for genealogists and historical societies. So if you were cleaning out a closet, please give them to us. We'll gladly
The yellow pages.
take them.
And they used to be really thick because it has the name and address of the person, so you can look alphabetically and like, oh, they lived in this area, and then you can kind of do a timeline with that. And city directories are
Yep,
really good
city
too. I think we
directories.
have some there at the museum.
Yep, from the 50s,
Yeah. So
1950s.
we're trying to really build up and make us a great genealogy archive. You know, we've got yearbooks from John Glenn.
Almost every John Glenn yearbook, a lot of Wayne, Marshall. We're missing some, so if you have yearbooks,
I'm
we'll
looking
take
for
those
West Lutheran because Alice Cooper went to school there. So we got some famous people from this area, and I need some yearbooks with Alice Cooper in it. Next slide, please. All right. I am an MSW, which is a Master of Social Work. So confidentiality and privacy records are very important to me. And you heard me mention HIPAA earlier. We do have some surgical records only, but you have to prove you are actually the next of kin to get access to that. I don't know if you saw the last presentation that Jeff did on Eloise, where he talked about how many lobotomies were done. That's where he got that information from. But if you are looking for some of the records, Wayne County Department of Public Health actually has them on microfiche, because I used to be the department manager there for social work. So I used to know the lady who would look up the stuff on microfiche. It may take a long time, especially with short-staffed and you having to prove you are the next of kin. Okay, this is very serious stuff. I mean, really, do you really want to know what treatments they went through, or you know what was disclosed? We do have some probate records. I had a volunteer help us. She went through Family Search. We had to go through record by record by record to look up the probate records. Most of those probate records were people who were mentally insane, and the court ordered them into the facility. It only goes up to 1901 what we have on our computer. So you'd have to go down to Wayne County, downtown Detroit, go down to their archives and request this information if you want probate records, okay? They're not gonna tell you the mental health diagnosis or anything like that. They're just gonna say that this person was asked to be put into the asylum due to not being able to care for themselves, or this relative, or whatever. Relatives' names, oh, okay, there's their family members, okay? Yeah, I talked about the patient records on census, 1920, 30, maybe 1900. 1900 to about maybe 1950 now. I don't know, I'm not sure what they asked on the 1950 census. The questions always changed based on what the government wanted to know, okay? And then I talked about Michiganology. They have to be 100 years old for you to view the image. Okay? And sometimes the handwriting was horrendous. My second great grandfather in French, his name was Germain, but he went by Jerry or Jeremiah here in the United States. They wrote Goomis.
Oh, dear.
No wonder I couldn't find him. And then plus, he had a last name, St. Pierre to St. Peter. Well, every time you try to do a saint name, I get streets, churches. So that's very hard. So you may see, I've started doing ST dash and then the name to kind of differentiate them from churches or streets. Next slide, please. Okay, indigenous people. And I use the word indigenous. Okay. The Dawes Rolls are one of the biggest gold mines for people. But if you're trying to find your ancestry through the indigenous lines and for tribal reasons or whatever, you have to be 1/4 of a specific tribe to get membership or casino rights some people want to do. It's very hard to do because, you know, you got to think about back then, people married different ones. A lot of people think because I'm French Canadian, yeah, I got Native or yeah, I got indigenous in me. Not always. I thought our family was Mohawk at one time. It was a Dutch name. So I'm like, well, and then I did the DNA test and nothing came up as indigenous. So, and then I did the King's Daughters, which is called the Filles de Oise. King Louis of France sent a bunch of women to go back to help give wives to the men. And these women had to be able to survive the winters. They couldn't have been high-class women. They had to be really down-and-out women, you know. They could survive rough times and rough weather. And he gave them all a dowry from France to come over and become husbands to the men in Quebec. And you'll see some of them intermarried in the tribes, and those individuals are called Métis, which means they're, you know, white and Native American. So there's you can't be Canadian from a Canadian tribe for American tribe benefits either. So there's a lot of things that go into it, and it's very hard, and I don't want to discourage anybody, but don't think you're going to get any tribal rights. All right, you got anything to say on that one? Next slide, please, because this might be, it's done? It's done. Does anybody have any questions for us?
I do. My
Oh,
parents-
hold on.
Oh, he wants to get you.
No, just so
we can
they can
repeat
hear
it. We can repeat it.
My parents both came as infants from Europe, and so, you know, the lineage doesn't go back. How do you track or get information from Europe? You know, like my dad was from Italy, his family, and my mom was from the Ukraine.
Well, Ukraine's going to be hard.
I know, but I mean, I'm just
Okay, so
saying,
she was asking the question, her parents were infants coming from the Ukraine and from Italy, okay? You might have to go there, okay? Well, you know, Italy, very Roman Catholic,
Yes,
church
yes.
records. Ukraine, probably similar, but with the borders, Polish genealogy is very hard, okay? A lot of times it's language translation. I got back to 1800 and I'm stuck with one of my families, okay? A lot of records were lost during World War II with the bombings. Okay, there is an Ellis Island website that you can check to see if there's a name of them coming through Ellis Island. Before Ellis Island was something Gardens, and then you have Philadelphia as a port of entry too. So Family Search may have some of these immigration records there. State of Michigan used to have the citizenship or naturalization records on their State of Michigan website, but I haven't been able to find them. They're broken up by county, so it depends on, in Michigan, where they went to go get their citizenship.
well, they were in Pennsylvania, and then both my parents, you know, came here in the 40s, so.
So you might want to talk to the Pennsylvania archives to see, because the records, the ship records will tell where they came from, what port they came from too. But you know, like for Cornwall, I use the Cornish index that's online, a church record index, and then I go back on Family Search with the same dates, and I try to see if the image is there. Okay, because theirs is all transcribed. There's a French Canadian index as well. So I jump back and forth between the sites because Family Search is run by the Church of Latter-day Saints, so it's part of their religious practice to find their ancestors, okay? And they do religious services for that and everything. But they have gotten so much better with their website now that they actually have the images rather than what family members have given, okay? So you want to get the actual document image. And what I do is I download them, I highlight my people in red squares, and I upload them to Ancestry and Family Search. So there's an actual correct document or source for them.
The other thing you might want to do is, if you're on Facebook, look for a page or a group that is specific for that location or that ethnicity. There's several Facebook pages called Genealogy Just Ask. There's a general one, Genealogy Just Ask, and then there's one for every state, almost every European country. And like I said at the beginning, I took the whole year of 2013 off of researching. I didn't research one thing, which was kind of odd because it is an addiction. But when I came back on January 1st, 2014, I said, my brick wall is Manchester, England. I want to know, get some information on my second great grandparents. And someone in Manchester, England gave me their marriage registry at the cathedral in Manchester, which at the time was just a church. It wasn't a cathedral yet. They gave me their kids' baptisms. In the marriage registry, it showed the address where they were living. So I Google searched that. Do that. Google search addresses and see what's there now. Because of the bombings in World War II, one address is now like a business park, kind of like, I hate to say it and bring up bad memories, but World Trade Center area. That's what it looks like. The other address is a bunch of row houses that you would see in maybe New York City or one of the boroughs out that way. But those weren't the houses that were there 150 years ago. There weren't even the houses that were there 75 years ago or 80 years ago because of the bombings, because Manchester was big into war material manufacturing. The other thing, look at all the cities that you connect to, like Oscoda, Port Huron. Look at those areas, those cities, because they all have a museum or a historical society or a genealogical society for the county that they're in. Wayne County has a historical.
He's just going to the first slide.
Has a historical or a genealogical
Society.
society for the Wayne County. There's so many sources out there. We do have a list on our website. Again, it's WHVP 66. That's Westland Historic Village Park 66 for the year Westland became a city. At Weebly, WEEBLY.com.
Now, family Bibles are a big thing that people are starting to scan now too, which you may have never had access to. And you got to remember, like, if you go farther out west, before it was even states or territories, they didn't do a lot of documentation, no birth, marriage, or deaths. But people died, so they had to take care of the property. So you want to look at wills and probate records. Probate records showed all their properties, and I hate to say this, people were listed too. So that, and a lot of times after the American Civil War, some of those people took on the last name of the person that had them.
Here's our website.
Okay, so that's how, like for you, I'm not sure how far you go back if you're recent immigrants here or if your family's been in the States for a long time.
Research and other links.
You want to look at similar last names and pull wills or probate records. And then probably can find people in the 1850 census. I've done a few families, are friends of mine, and we've gotten pretty far back. And you got to remember, Texas was the last state to find out about the Emancipation Proclamation. So people still lived there, didn't know, hey, this is all over. So I'm not sure where your people may have came from or your ancestors, but check the probate records.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you guys for coming.
Oh my God, it was very interesting.
I hope this helped you out and showed you how to do it kind of for free.
Yeah.
What's good records and what's not. So I'm very thankful that you guys came. And I ask that you guys join the Historical Society, please, because we need more members. We need to get our Historical Society going again. You know, we got some stuff we got to take care of historical-wise, so we need you. Okay?
Also,
Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead. Sorry.
Could I just ask about the JED match?
Okay.
Uploading your DNA results. When I was on Ancestry, and I'm going to be getting back on, but first person I hear from is another DNA person that matches with
No,
you.
JED match is only DNA uploaded.
Okay, and he says, so are you going to upload your DNA? I think it would really help, and I didn't know anything about it.
You upload your DNA result. You can download it from Ancestry,
Yeah.
upload it to JED match, and they give you an ID number. So when you say, what's your JED match number? Mine is, and you can go on JED match and put their number and your number, and they'll say if you have any common
There's
DNA.
nothing wrong with doing it or any security
It's-
issues
no.
or anything
No.
like
No.
that?
But you'll get a list of all kinds of people.
What-
Like I have a ton from Finland. I'm like, I don't know who they are.
What you're actually downloading from Ancestry is the raw data,
Yeah,
and then that's what you're uploading to GEDmatch.
okay.
It's basically the same thing as doing
The through lines on Ancestry.
Yeah, the through lines on Ancestry.
Now there's a way if you want to kind of manipulate the through lines, you mark a certain, like a grandmother as the primary ancestor, and it may take you back farther.
Yeah.
But I don't know the trick to that. I've just heard about it. So you can instead of making you the primary person, hey, grandma's the primary person now. And then that's how I was able with the doctor with two families. Prove that we were connected because we shared a similar grandmother, which was his grandmother.
So
The
before
secrets always come out.
Yeah.
You may try to hide something back in the day, but this DNA is going to bring it all out. I'm just giving you a warning.
before we break for the evening, yes, you had a question?
Yes, I did 23andMe, and they track my ancestry back to a certain percentage of being Neanderthal. Has anybody hit that?
I did DNA tribes one time, but that was like 20 some years ago. I mean, you know, we all came from somewhere like that. I mean, we wouldn't be here if we didn't.
So
Most of us came from the African continent too.
the question was about 23andMe and going back to Neanderthals. I have not done 23andMe. I don't know. You know, obviously, like Brenda said, there is somebody way back at the beginning. And I don't know where our beginning was or who they were.
They say everybody with blue eyes shares a common ancestor. And just to give you a forewarning about the DNA, the police departments are now using them to solve unsolved mysteries or crimes. So they have identified Jane Does, John Does. They have identified a family member who may have been in a crime, and you know they might not be happy with you because you uploaded your DNA, and they got caught. So just know that the police departments are now using GEDmatch and Ancestry for their crime solving.
Before we close for the night, I do have to remind you that we are open on Wayne Road, the Westland Historic Village Park, every Saturday from 1 to 4, except for holidays. So we won't be open for like Memorial Day or Easter. You got to remind me to change that. Also, check out our Facebook page, our website for any changes in times or any upcoming events.
I am trying to bring weddings. So if you want a wedding at the one-room schoolhouse or at the village, let me know.
We do also have a program that I'm hoping we can get off the ground called Memorial Day Banners or Fallen Heroes We're looking for World War I to the present, anybody who served in any armed forces. We're looking for a picture of them in their uniform, hopefully, the dates of service, and for Memorial Day, they have to be deceased while in service. So if they left the service and they died of wounds afterwards, that's fine. But if they lived to 80 years old and they passed away, we'll save those for Veterans Day.
So that's the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day, just so you know, historical education moment.
So if you're interested in that, please contact us and we can get the picture and the information from you. Again, April 30th is our cleanup day. It's 10 to 4. We'll have indoor and outdoor tasks. I'll be there.
You said there's going to be pizza, right?
Yes, there'll be pizza about halfway through, 1 o'clock. So if you're interested in that, if you can help out with that, even sitting at a table and polishing silverware, we'll take it. Please.
And who doesn't want to sit in a cool house?
We have an octagon house.
My favorite's the farmhouse.
Yeah, because it's the original house to the property. So please come and visit us. I believe I will be there on this Saturday. Probably you'll cut that or
We have a ton of events coming up. So check the website, check the Facebook page under events. During the cruise, we're going to have yard sale people there, and we're trying to bring people to our park. You guys have such a gem here in Westland, and how many times have we heard, we didn't even know you were here?
Every Saturday. Every
And it's
Saturday I hear, I didn't know you were here. So please come visit.
This is your history, your park. You know, we can make this like Greenmead. We can make this like the Henry Ford if we really wanted to.
All right. Again, my name is Ryan. I'm the president of the Historical Commission.
And Brenda.
Brenda is the secretary. Please come and visit us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice.